Okay, so the books I've read recently, so in terms of the one I'm reading right now, I'm actually halfway through Heinlein's Moon is a Harsh Mistress. So it's about Earth, which is called Terra, and the Moon, which is called Lunar. I can't remember now what it's called. Oh, it's called the Rock in the book too. But it's actually really neat. It's a futuristic society, which there are multiple cities on the moon, and the language is different in the book. They don't use the word the, except for this one professor uses the word the and speaks, and I don't know if they call it Old English, but it's kind of interesting. They have different words for things, and you can pick up what they mean as you go in the book. Like, for example, I remember sex is called bundling. They have really strange marriage structures. They have clan or linear marriage structures where women have multiple husbands who have different ranks in the family, and they adopt people all the time, and they're part of the family. And anyways, they start a conspiracy to declare independence from the earth, and they start a cell. You might want to look that up because it's actually kind of an interesting structure in terms of making sure that people don't know who everyone else is in the organization in case there are spies. And they hook up with a mainframe computer who is semi-sentient and helps them plan and provide a hub for communication and all that. So it's actually really neat. I'm really enjoying it. I had heard, someone had mentioned to me, or maybe it was on YouTube, that they liked Heinlein more for the political philosophy, and I remember them saying that they thought Heinlein was more philosophically sophisticated than Ayn Rand politically. The first chapter of the book, or maybe it's the second chapter, very early on in the book, it does talk a little bit about political philosophy. Very brief. I did not find it that sophisticated. I actually I guess I could find it and make a comment on it. I have been making notes in the book as I go, but there have been very few notes. But I have made notes on interesting, there's some family structure stuff I made notes on because I thought it was kind of interesting. But I did mark where he mentioned about political philosophy, if I can find it. There is stuff about free will. One thing I thought was interesting that he mentioned was what's the difference between paths, like in the brain, protein paths or platinum paths in terms of free will. Because what the assertion here is that it's kind of the materialist position on free will in terms of a sophisticated brain produces the illusion of choice, but it really is still determined. And in the same way, if you have a complex enough logic structure in a computer, you can also produce the illusion of free will in the computer, as if it could talk to you, kind of like those Turing machines. If you don't know what that is, I invite you to look that up. But that's kind of interesting. But let me find the political philosophy part. I didn't see it flipping through here the first time. So here's some of the bits here. Again, it's very brief. This is on page 82. Under what circumstances may the state justly place its welfare above that of a citizen? So that is a fundamental question in political philosophy, the relationship between the individual and the state and the government, or the group versus the individual. That's a fundamental question in political philosophy, and no political position, no political party is worth anything unless they have an answer to that question, unless they take a stance on that question. So, of course, left-wing groups will put the group or the state higher than the individual, and a right-wing group would put the individual higher than the state. And of course, if you go further into that in terms of like American foundations, then the government or the group even is actually a creation of the individual in terms of the individuals comply or agree that a state is necessary and create the state, as opposed to the other way around. So that's the ideology there. That's the foundations of that. So again, he says at the bottom, under what circumstances is it moral for a group to do that which is not moral for a member of that group to do alone? So again, if you've looked into more of this stuff on YouTube, there's a popular YouTuber who is a libertarian / anarchist named Stefan Molyneux. Stefbot is his YouTube channel. He talks about this quite a bit, saying that how is it possible that for me to print money is wrong, is counterfeiting, but for the government to print money is okay, is inflation, is quantitative easing? They invent these new words, and yet the actual action they're doing is wrong for the person to do, but the state somehow transcends morality and becomes its own morality, a group morality, a state morality. If I shoot someone, I'm charged with murder, but if an army shoots someone, that's war. A policeman shoots someone, that's arresting someone who's resisting or something like that. So there's another fundamental question, is how is it possible that ethics can be different for individuals versus groups, if those groups are merely the collection of individuals? So in this book, the author, the character speaking, labels himself a rational anarchist, and they mention Rand in here. They call the one character that he's talking to, asks him if he's a Randite, and that's definitely a reference to Rand. But it's funny, by calling himself a rational anarchist, he's almost using the rational part as in rational egoist, which is an Ayn Rand concept. He's almost kind of borrowing that term rational, but then saying, oh, I'm not obviously the Ayn Rand political philosophy did include a small state, a minarchist state, but he's not suggesting that here. He's suggesting a rational anarchist. Now, of course, the Ayn Rand and the objectivists would disagree that an anarchist can be possibly rational in his political philosophy. And so he goes on and he says that there is no, in terms of morals, there is no such thing as a state. Just men, individuals, each responsible for his own actions. And then they talk about rules and laws, and the character says, you can have all the rules and laws, this isn't a quote, you can have all the rules and laws you like, but I'm going to comply with them or not based on what I think. So he says, I alone am morally responsible for everything that I do. Tell me what law, dear lady, and I will tell you whether I will obey it. So it's very individual on his own. So anyways, I don't think that's very politically sophisticated, but someone out there thinks that's the case. But anyways, it's a great book. I really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. So that's Heinlein's A Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Okay, another book. So that is sci-fi, I guess, futuristic fiction. Here's a political book I read.